We begin our tour of worship in the Bible by looking at the first book. Worship is introduced in chapter 4, where Cain and Abel both offered sacrifices. Abel's was acceptable, but Cain's wasn't. We're not told why, but we are told that Cain murdered his brother as a result. Dreadful. A few generations later, Abraham turns up, and he formed the practice of building an altar to the Lord and calling on the name of the Lord. He did it twice at Bethel, then he did it at Hebron. At Beersheba, he planted a tamarisk tree and called on the name of the Lord. And finally at Mount Moriah, and this is the first time that there's any kind of hint of instruction from God about it, at Mount Moriah he was told, go and offer Isaac as a sacrifice. So he built an altar there. Thankfully, that turned out to only be a test, and he didn't have to go through with it. So that was good. Then Isaac, next generation, he put up an altar at Beersheba. And the next generation, Jacob, he put up a pillar at Bethel where he had his dream and said it was the house of God and called on God there. He put up an altar at Shechem. And now here's another significant one. Jacob was told, go to Bethel and build an altar there, God told him. That's the first indication, really, or the second indication, that God wanted these altars. So he did that. And finally, Jacob offered sacrifices at Beersheba. All this makes me think of the universal human tendency when you want to approach God, or you better put up a shrine or have a special holy place. You can see it all over the world. People put up temples and shrines to all kinds of gods. It's clearly a deep part of human nature. However, there's one hint in Genesis, clear hint, of the worship that was to come, which was that in chapter 15, God gave Abraham a vision of what was going to happen to his descendants, and Abraham was told to bring 3 animals and divide them down the middle, and then 2 birds as well were there, and God spoke to him in that context. So this prefigures what was going to happen in the book of Exodus, to which we come next. But I finally want to add a thought from the Gospels that Jesus was transfigured in the presence of his disciples on one occasion, and he was glowing white, and Moses and Elijah turned up, and Peter, who was way out of his depth, said, Lord, shall we put up shelters for the 3 of you? And a voice came from heaven, which I think is significant. God doesn't often speak in an audible voice, but he wanted to get a very important message through. A voice came from heaven saying, this is my son whom I love, listen to him. God, it seemed, wasn't interested in shelters on that occasion. What he wanted was for them to actually listen to what Jesus said. And a moment later, everything returned to normal, it was just Jesus with them. Now we need to wait to the book of Exodus to find out what sort of worship God wants, because there's a lot of instruction about it. So we go there next.